Welcome everyone, this is Shadi Abu-Yusuf and another episode of Filmo-linguistics. And today we're going to talk about another interesting linguistic form. Let's have a look at this. So, as we see, we've got a movie here, and this movie was released in 1955, and the name of the movie is Ain't Misbehaving. Ain't Misbehaving, right? So the form we're talking about today is actually ain't, right? So let's see the secrets of this form. Let's talk about its form, pronunciation, etymology, function. Let's see. And as we see, ain't is a contracted form. But the question is, a contracted form of what exactly? Surprise, surprise. It is a contracted form for am not, is not, are not, have not, and has not. Isn't that crazy? So, am not, is not, are not, have not, and has not. It is a contracted form for these five. Right, so let's move to another part of form. How does this happen? Where does this come from? So let's talk about are not. And let me give you an example from the movie Empire. Let's have a look at the script. Right, and in this movie, we have ain't used as a contracted form for are not. It says here, undercover units are always on the spot, but they ain't fooling nobody. Listen to that again. But they ain't fooling nobody. But they ain't fooling nobody. So again, they ain't. Well, I mean, it is supposed to be they are not. And if we're going to contract are not, it will be they aren't fooling nobody. They aren't. But as you see here, it's they ain't fooling nobody. Another example. Now, let's move to ain't as a contracted form of am not. And again, ain't is used as a contracted form for am not. Let's have a look at this movie. And the movie is Crossroads. So let's have a look at part of the script. And here, I ain't gonna act politically correct. I only want to have a good time. I ain't gonna act politically correct. I only want to have a good time. I ain't gonna act. I ain't gonna act politically correct. I ain't gonna. So originally, okay, so ain't here is used instead of am not. Now again, another part on form, and this time is not. And let's have a look at this movie. The Badge. Wonderful. And okay, and in The Badge, let's have a look at this script. There's a woman out here and she ain't moving. There's a woman out here and she ain't moving. She ain't moving. She ain't moving. Now again, instead of she isn't moving, she ain't moving. So ain't here is used instead of is not. Now let's move to another part of form as well. And this time we're talking about noun plus ain't. So ain't can come also after nouns, not only pronouns. Not instead of he's not, or they're not, or she's not. But let's have a look at this movie. And the movie is Malibus. Okay? So let's see. Looking at the script. Growing up in the streets ain't no joke. There's crazy crime, drugs, and mad violence. Okay. Growing up in the streets ain't no joke. There's crazy crime, drugs, and mad violence. So again, growing up in the streets ain't no joke. This is instead of isn't. So it's supposed to be growing up in the streets isn't no joke. Yeah, someone might say, but Shadi, is it correct to use double negative in English? Well, of course we say no, it's incorrect, but this is kind of street English, or what we call non-standard English, or some people might call it slang English. So it's more that it's a spoken more than written, of course. Right, good. Now, so this is instead of isn't, as we said. Now, let's talk about using ain't even in asking questions. And let's have a look at this movie, which is Kelly's Heroes. And what happens here? Let's have a look at the script. Again, anything else? What do you mean? Ain't that enough for you? Look at this. Ain't that enough for you? Let's listen to the conversation one more time. Anything else? What do you mean? Ain't that enough for you? Ain't that enough for you? Ain't that? So again, it is also used in questions. Now, so let's move to ain't as a contracted form of have not. And we have the movie Cats Don't Dance. Let's have a look at the script here. They ain't seen nothing like it. They ain't seen nothing like it. So this usage, instead of they haven't seen nothing like it. And again, we can see that there is also a double negative here. So again, double negative is used also in spoken English. And again, is it correct? We say it's non-standard English, right? It's supposed to be incorrect. Now, let's have a look at has not. And let's look at the script from the movie Space Chimps. As we see, the Hubble Space Telescope ain't got nothing on me. The Hubble Space Telescope ain't got nothing on me. Ain't got nothing on me. Ain't got nothing on me. So this is instead of has not or hasn't got nothing on me. And again, we can see also double negative here. Now, still talking about form. Again, ain't is considered non-standard English. And this is by educated speakers of English language. They say that ain't is not a standard. It is incorrect. And sometimes, educated people even make fun of this word and they say ain't a word. Or sometimes they say ain't in the dictionary. So what is the pronunciation? We've got two pronunciation actually. You can say ain't, or you can say ain't. Okay, so you can say I ain't happy, or you can say I ain't happy. So it's either I ain't happy. So repeat after me: I ain't happy, I ain't happy, I ain't happy. Or you can say I ain't happy, I ain't happy, I ain't happy. So the second version is faster, right? But what is the etymology of ain't? And what we mean by the etymology is where did it come from? And how did it happen in English language that we have one word that works as a contracted form for 5 other forms in English language? Am not, is not, are not, have not, and has not. It's interesting, isn't it? Let's have a look. So we say, let's talk about am not. And how did it happen that ain't became a contracted form of am not? And we say that in 1618, there was a contracted form of am not, which is ant. That sounds weird, isn't it? But again, in 1618, there was actually a contracted form of am not called ant. But as we know, the use of 2 nasals back to back in English language is disfavored. And what do we mean by 2 nasals back to back? And look at m. M is a nasal sound. And n is a nasal sound. What do we mean by nasal sounds? When we say nasal sounds, we mean by this that the air comes out of your nasal cavity. Let me give you a quick experiment. So you just try to say and then pinch your nose. So again, the sound will stop immediately. Why? Because once you pinch your nose, you stop the air from leaving your nasal or your nostrils, and then the sound will stop. That's why we call it nasal. So the same thing with n. So try n. It stops. Now, so we have in this abbreviation here, in this contracted form, ament. In this contracted form, we have two nasal sounds back to back. We have m and n. This is not liked by English speakers. And that's why we have the word column. You've got m and n at the end, but the n is gone. So you only say column. You don't say column. And damn, you don't say damn. No, you say damn. The n is gone. Why? It's for the same reasons, because English speakers don't like to produce two nasal sounds back to back. And this led to the loss of the mat sound. So ament in 1618 became as ant later. So people started saying I am't instead of I amn't. So someone might say, but Shadi, why didn't they lose the n instead of the m? It's because the n represents the negative form, so it's so difficult to lose it. So ament in 1618 later became ant, and people started saying I ant, and this ant developed later to what we know as ain't, right? Now what about are not? Let's have a look. So are not, we have aren't, and usually British speakers, they don't pronounce the rat sound because British English is non-rhotic. The R is dropped in R. If you say R, and in the negative form you say aren't. So finally you're saying aren't. And again, so we end up having am not as ant and are not as aren't. Now let's move to isn't. What happened to isn't? Now isn't, the abbreviation of is not is isn't, and then isn't becomes int in the history of English language. So there was a time, okay, when isn't used to be written like int, so there was an elision of the Z sound. So she ain't happy. She ain't happy. He ain't happy. Okay, so that happened in the past. And again, this led also to ain't. So look at this, look at this, look at this. So look at this map that we see right now. So we have am not, and am not became amn't in 1618, and amn't became ant, and then are not, aren't, and then is not, isn't, and then int, and this int turned into ant as well. And finally, all this led to ain't. So that's the history of ain't, and this is the development of these three into the form we know now as ain't. Right, good. Now, let's talk about have not and has not. How did it happen that these two became ain't as well? Because that's also weird. And the story goes as follows, that these two used to be ha'n't in 1675. So in 1675, have not and has not used to be written as ha'n't and pronounced as ha'n't. Okay, so people would say, I hadn't seen this, I hadn't seen this, and instead of I haven't. Or someone say, she hadn't seen this, instead of hasn't. And we know that in so many dialects, the H can be dropped at the very beginning of a word. Like in some dialects in British English, people might say, he's got a good house, he's got a good house, and instead of he's got a good house. So he's got a good house. So instead of he, it is he, and instead of house, it's an house. Okay, again, so what happened that ha'n't later became, again, ain't in 1830. So look at this. So have not, has not became hand in 1675, and then in 1830 hand became ain't. Right. So let's move to sociolinguistics. How do people look at ain't? And we would say, in the past, in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries, ain't was okay. It was loved by everyone. It was okay to use it in formal writing. It was even used by very famous writers like Jonathan Swift, Lord Byron, Henry Fielding, and George Eliot. Those people used ain't in their writings, and it was formal English. And however, you don't know what happened, that people now changed the way they look at ain't, and they started considering ain't as a non-standard form of English language. So this is the story of ain't. So let's sum up. So ain't is used as a contracted form of for isn't, aren't, and am not. Also have not and has not. Okay, and that's really interesting. It used to be considered a standard form of English language, but nowadays people look at it as incorrect English. So this was another episode of Filmo-linguistics with Shadi Abusive. So if you like this video, don't forget to press like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to activate notifications. Thank you so much. See you again. Bye bye.